The email notification sound cut through the silence of my home office at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was finalizing the renderings for the Aspen Eco Lodge project, my firm's biggest commission to date. The kind of project that would put Evergreen Design Studio on the map. The kind of project that represented every late night, every sacrifice, every dollar of the $280,000 I'd saved over 7 years. I clicked the email. The subject line was corporate and cold. Notice of default, commercial construction loan number 4782, Mr. My hands stopped moving on the trackpad. Mr. Maya Reeves. My initials. I opened it. The body of the email was dense with legal terminology, but 3 things jumped off the screen like they were written in blood. Principal balance. $2,500,000. Primary guarantor. Maya Catherine Reeves. Default status. 90 days past due. Foreclosure proceedings. Initiated. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of my drafting table. $2.5 million. A loan I had never seen. A loan I had never signed. A loan that was about to destroy everything I'd built. Have you ever discovered that the people you trusted most had turned your name into a weapon against you? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to become the architect of your own rescue. My name is Maya Reeves. I'm 29 years old. I live in Denver, and I own a sustainable architecture firm. I design buildings that are meant to last, structures with integrity. But the foundation of my own life had just cracked wide open. This wasn't the first time. That's the part that should have warned me. My family's pattern of using me was as old as my first memory of a blueprint. When I was 8, my grandfather Arthur Reeves let me sit at his drafting table in his architecture firm. It was a Sunday, and the office was quiet. He handed me a pencil and a clean sheet of vellum. "Draw me a house, Maya," he said, his voice warm and patient. I drew a tiny cottage with a pitched roof and a chimney. He pinned it to the wall next to his licenses. "That's the start of something beautiful," he told me. My father, Gregory, walked in. He glanced at my drawing, then at my grandfather. "Don't encourage this, Arthur," he said, his voice tight. "She's not going to be an architect. This family doesn't need 2 architects. It needs a united legacy." I was 8. I didn't understand what he meant. I just knew that the warmth in the room had turned cold. By the time I was 16, I'd been quietly interning at my grandfather's firm after school, learning CAD software, studying load-bearing calculations, falling in love with the process of turning vision into structure. My grandfather had promised me a formal apprenticeship after graduation. Then one afternoon, my father sat me down in our living room. His face was serious, the face he used when he wanted to sound reasonable while doing something unforgivable. "Maya," he said, "your grandfather's getting old. The firm needs strong leadership. I'm stepping in as managing partner. You'll need to step back. Family businesses can't have too many voices. It confuses clients." I tried to argue. I showed him my portfolio, my designs, my letters of recommendation from my grandfather's senior architects. He waved them away. "You're talented, Maya, but talent isn't leadership. You'll find your own path. Just not this one." I found out later he'd told my grandfather I'd lost interest. That I wanted to pursue something else. My grandfather, trusting his son, had believed him. I became the family's silent support system. The one who was always so responsible. The one who didn't need attention because I was self-sufficient. That's what they called it. Self-sufficient. It was just another word for invisible. I worked 3 jobs through college. I graduated with a degree in architecture and 0 family help. I saved every dollar. I lived in a basement studio with no windows for 4 years while I built my client base, designing small renovations, garden sheds, modest additions. Slowly, carefully, I built Evergreen Design Studio into something real, and every time my family needed money, I gave it. Because that's what the responsible one does. That's what the builder does. She fixes things. When I was 24, my father came to me. His latest development deal had collapsed. He needed $35,000 to bridge a gap before his next project came through. "It's temporary, Maya," he said. "I'll have it back to you in 6 months. Family helps family." I wired the money the next day. 6 months turned into 6 years. The money never came back. When I asked about it, he looked at me like I'd insulted him. "You're really going to nickel and dime your own father?" he said. "After everything I taught you? I was the ATM. The resource. The foundation they built their lives on. And I was too afraid of being called selfish to say no, but the real escalation started 6 months ago. It was subtle at first, the kind of thing you convince yourself you're imagining. My father started calling me more often. Not to ask how I was doing. To ask about my projects. "How's the Aspen Lodge coming?" he'd say, his voice too casual. "What's the budget on that one?" I'd tell him, proud of the work, and he'd whistle. "$250,000 in fees?" My daughter, the breadwinner, it felt like praise. It wasn't. It was an appraisal. Then my mother started showing up at my office unannounced. She'd bring coffee, sit in my waiting area, flip through design magazines. "I just wanted to see where my brilliant daughter works," she'd say. But her eyes would linger on my files, my open laptop, the documents on my desk. One afternoon, she asked to use my computer to check her email. "Mine's dead, sweetheart, and I'm expecting an important message from the gallery." I let her. I was in a client meeting in the next room. When I came back, she was gone. My laptop was still open, the screen showing my desktop. I didn't think anything of it at the time. 2 weeks later, my father asked me to help him with a quick document scan. He'd brought over a stack of old family papers, photos, my grandfather's obituary, random things he said he wanted to digitize. "You've got that high-res scanner in your office, right?" "I don't trust those drugstore kiosks." I spent an hour scanning everything while he waited, making small talk, asking about my workload. I didn't notice the small USB drive he'd plugged into my computer while I was pulling files. I didn't notice him watching my screen as I logged into my bank account to check a payment from a client. I didn't notice that my passwords, my signatures, my entire digital identity were being recorded. 3 months ago, my brother Derek called me at midnight. His voice was panicked, slurred. "Maya, I need help. The resort deal is falling apart. We're going to lose everything. Dad's invested everything. Mom's freaking out. Please, can you co-sign a loan? Just as a backup. We won't even use your credit. It's just a formality." I said no. For the first time in my life, I said no. "Derek, I can't risk my business on another one of your projects." "I'm sorry." There was a long pause. Then his voice changed. It wasn't panicked anymore. It was cold. "You're really going to do this? After everything Dad did for you? After he gave you the Reeves name? You'd have nothing without that name, Maya." "Nothing." He hung up. I sat there in my dark apartment, my hands shaking, wondering if I'd just made a terrible mistake. But I knew I'd made the right choice. I knew it in my bones. What I didn't know was that they'd already made the choice for me. The default notice wasn't a request. It was a bill for a crime I didn't know I'd committed. I stayed up all night reading the loan documents attached to the email. The details were meticulous, almost admiring in their cruelty. The loan was taken out 8 weeks ago through a commercial lending group called Pinnacle Construction Finance. It was a construction loan, the type used to fund large-scale building projects. The collateral listed was a 12-acre plot of land in Vail, Colorado. The project description: luxury mountain resort and spa, Reeves Family Legacy Project. My signature was on every page. Digital, but perfect. My initials in the margins. My social security number. My business tax ID. Even a scanned copy of my driver's license, but I'd never seen this loan. I'd never been to Vail to look at land. I'd never heard of Pinnacle Construction Finance. I called the number on the email at 7 a.m. the next morning. A chipper loan officer named Brad answered. "Ms. Reeves, we've been trying to reach you. Your account is significantly past due. We've sent multiple notices to your business address." "I never received any notices," I said, my voice carefully controlled. "And I didn't take out this loan." There was a pause. The cheerfulness drained from his voice. "Ma'am, I'm looking at your application right now. Your signature is notarized. Your income documentation is attached. You listed your firm, Evergreen Design Studio, as the primary business entity. Are you saying this is fraud?" "Yes," I said. The word felt like I was swallowing glass. "This is fraud." "I see." Another pause. Ma'am, if you're alleging fraud, you'll need to file a police report and provide us with documentation. But I need to inform you that the loan is in default, and we've initiated foreclosure proceedings on the collateral property. What property? I said, I don't own land in Vale. According to our records, Brad said, his voice now cold and bureaucratic. The collateral is a 12-acre parcel in Vale, Colorado. Title is held in the name of Evergreen Design Studio, LLC. If you're claiming you don't own this property, Ms. Reeves, you may want to check your business filings. My stomach dropped. I pulled up my business records. I searched for any property holdings. And there it was, buried in a filing from 6 weeks ago, a deed transfer. Evergreen Design Studio, LLC, now owned a 12-acre plot of land in Vale, Colorado. The transfer was signed by me, notarized, and recorded with the county. I had never signed that deed. I had never seen that land. But my signature was there, perfect and legal. I sat there, staring at my screen, and the full shape of the betrayal came into focus. This wasn't just a loan. This was a systematic, planned, premeditated attack. They hadn't just forged my signature on a loan document. They'd forged my signature on a property deed. They'd created an entire fake business transaction. They'd used my firm, my name, my reputation as collateral for their fantasy. And when it collapsed, I would be the one left in the wreckage. For the first time in my life, I felt nothing. Not panic, not rage, not even sadness. Just a cold, clinical clarity. I was an architect. I understood structures. I understood how things were built, and how they could be taken apart. And I was about to dismantle my family with the same precision I used to design buildings. The first person I called was Diane Walsh. She was my grandfather's former business partner, a structural engineer who'd left the firm 5 years before he died. She was the one person in my life who'd always seen my father for what he was. Maya, she said, her voice warm but cautious. It's been too long. What's wrong? I didn't waste time on pleasantries. Diane, my father forged my signature on a $2.5 million loan. He used my business as collateral. I need help. There was a beat of silence. Then, quietly, I knew this day would come. I'll be at your office in an hour. She arrived with a banker's box. Inside were documents I'd never seen, original contracts from my grandfather's firm, drafts in his handwriting, and a notarized letter dated 3 weeks before he died. She handed it to me. Read this, she said. Your grandfather knew. The letter was addressed to me. In my grandfather's shaky handwriting, it read, Maya, if you're reading this, it means Gregory has done something unforgivable. He did it to me, and I was too weak to stop him. He forged my signature on a contract that transferred 80% of the firm's ownership to him. He told the board I was senile. By the time I realized what he'd done, it was too late. Don't let him do the same to you. Fight, Maya. You have the strength I didn't. The original contracts are in Diane's care. Use them. Your loving grandfather, Arthur. I read the letter 3 times. My hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell me? I asked Diane, my voice cracking. Because you weren't ready to hear it, she said gently. You were still trying to be his daughter. You had to see it for yourself. She opened the banker's box. Inside were the original incorporation documents for the firm, in my grandfather's handwriting. Side by side with them were the updated documents filed 6 months before he died. The signatures didn't match. The forgery was obvious if you knew what to look for. Your father has done this before, Maya, Diane said. He's a systematic thief. He stole the firm from your grandfather. And now he's trying to steal your future. But this time, we have proof. But that wasn't the real problem. The real problem came 2 days later, when Diane introduced me to Rebecca Stone. Rebecca was a real estate fraud attorney, mid-40s, with the kind of face that could have been carved from ice. She listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers. Maya, she said, her voice flat and clinical, your father didn't just commit loan fraud. He committed title fraud, identity theft, and wire fraud. Each of those is a federal felony. But here's what you need to understand. If you don't act immediately, you won't just lose your savings. You'll lose your firm, your reputation, and possibly your professional license. How? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Because, Rebecca said, pulling up a document on her laptop, the loan default will be reported to the Colorado Board of Architects. Financial crimes, especially those involving business entities, can be grounds for license suspension. Your father isn't just stealing your money, Maya. He's putting a loaded gun to your entire career. I felt like I'd been hit in the chest. My license. My entire life's work. What do? I asked. Rebecca's expression didn't change. We go to war. We file a police report for fraud. We file an emergency motion to freeze all assets. We get a forensic accountant to trace every dollar. And then we dismantle your father piece by piece until there's nothing left but the truth. Will it work? I asked. Rebecca finally smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of a predator. Maya, I don't do family mediation. I do demolition. By the time I'm done, your father will wish he'd never learned to forge a signature. The police report was filed on a Friday morning. Detective Sarah Kim took my statement, her face carefully neutral. When I showed her the forged deed and the loan documents, her expression hardened. Ms. Reeves, she said, this is one of the cleanest cases of identity theft I've seen. Your father is either very skilled or very stupid. Let's hope it's the latter. Rebecca's team moved fast. By Monday, we had an emergency restraining order preventing my father from accessing any accounts or properties in my name. By Wednesday, we had a forensic accountant named Marcus Chen digging through my father's financial records. That's when we found the twist. The loan wasn't just for a fake resort. The $2.5 million had been funneled into 3 separate accounts. $1.2 million had gone to pay off my father's gambling debts at a casino in Las Vegas. $800,000 had gone to purchase a luxury townhouse in Boulder, Colorado. The deed was in the name of a woman I'd never heard of, Stephanie Navarro, 34 years old, self-described wellness consultant. Marcus pulled up photos from the property listing. The townhouse was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a chef's kitchen, a rooftop deck. The listing described it as a private retreat for a discerning buyer. Maya, Marcus said, his voice careful, I think your father has a second family. I stared at the photos. In one of them, a woman with long dark hair stood on the rooftop deck, her arms around a little girl, maybe 4 years old. They were both smiling. The remaining $500,000 had been withdrawn in cash over the course of 6 weeks. Untraceable. Rebecca looked at me. This isn't just fraud, Maya. This is a complete parallel life. Your father used you to fund his escape plan. I felt something inside me harden into steel. Then let's make sure he doesn't escape. The confrontation came 3 days before Christmas. Rebecca had advised me not to engage, to let the legal process unfold. But I couldn't wait. I needed to see his face when he realized I knew. I drove to my parents' house in Cherry Creek, a sprawling faux Tuscan McMansion that my father had bought during one of his successful phases. I parked in the circular driveway and walked up to the front door. I didn't knock. I used my old key. They were in the living room, decorating the Christmas tree. My father was hanging ornaments. My mother was adjusting the lights. Derek was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. It was a perfect tableau of family bliss. I stood in the doorway. Hi, everyone, my father turned. His face broke into a wide, warm smile. Maya, we didn't know you were coming. This is a wonderful surprise, is it? I said. My voice was calm, almost pleasant. I got an interesting email a few weeks ago. About a loan. For $2.5 million. With my name on it. The smile froze on his face. My mother's hands stopped moving on the tree. Derek sat up, his eyes wide. I don't know what you're talking about, my father said. His voice was still smooth, but there was a tremor underneath. I pulled out my phone. I opened the email and held it up. This. A loan I never signed. For a property I never bought. Using my business as collateral. Maya, my mother started, her voice soothing. I'm sure there's been some kind of mistake. There's no mistake, I said. I pulled out a folder from my bag. I walked over to the coffee table and spread the documents across it. The forged deed, the loan application, the bank statements showing the wire transfers, the photos of the Boulder townhouse, the photo of Stephanie and the little girl. My father's face went white. My mother stared at the photos, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. You didn't just steal my money, I said, my voice still calm. You stole my identity. You committed wire fraud, title fraud, and identity theft. You risked my professional license. You used my life's work to pay for your gambling debts and your secret family. Maya, my father said, his voice now desperate, you don't understand. The resort was going to be real. It was going to save the family legacy. I was going to pay you back. Stop, I said. The word was a whip crack. There is no resort. There never was. There was only you, stealing from me the same way you stole from grandfather. That's when I pulled out the final document. My grandfather's letter. I read it aloud, every word. When I finished, my father looked like I'd shot him. That's a lie, he said, his voice shaking. Your grandfather was senile. He didn't know what he was signing. He knew, I said. And I have the original contracts. Diane kept them. We both know what you did. My mother started to cry. Real tears this time, not the performative kind. Maya, please. This will destroy the family. What will people think? I looked at her. For the first time, I saw her clearly. Not as my mother. As an accomplice. Mom, I said quietly, I don't care what people think. I care about the truth. I turned to leave. My father grabbed my arm. You can't do this. I'm your father. Family doesn't betray family. I pulled my arm free. You're right, I said. Family doesn't. But you stopped being my family the moment you forged my name. I walked out. Behind me, I heard my father shout, you'll regret this, Maya. You'll lose everything. I didn't look back. I got in my car, drove to the end of the street, and called Rebecca. File everything, I said. Criminal charges, civil suit, the works. Consider it done, she said. The next 6 months were a blur of depositions, hearings, and legal maneuvers. My father hired a high-powered defense attorney who tried to paint me as a vindictive daughter, someone who'd had a falling out with her family and was weaponizing the legal system. It didn't work. Rebecca presented the evidence with surgical precision. The forged signatures, the keylogger software found on my laptop, the wire transfers, the photos of Stephanie and the little girl, the original contracts showing my father's theft from my grandfather. The prosecution added charges I hadn't even known were possible. Elder fraud, for what he'd done to my grandfather, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and money laundering. The trial lasted 3 weeks. On the final day, the jury returned with their verdict in less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. My father was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. My mother, who'd been complicit in accessing my accounts, received 3 years probation and was ordered to pay restitution. Derek, who'd helped set up the fake LLC, received 2 years in a minimum security facility. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at my father as she delivered the sentence. Mr. Reeves, she said, you didn't just steal money. You stole your daughter's trust, your father's legacy, and the integrity of your profession. This court finds your actions to be particularly egregious given your position as a father and a professional. You will serve your time, and you will pay restitution in full. As they led my father out of the courtroom, he looked at me. His eyes were empty. The man who'd once seemed so powerful, so in control, was just a hollow shell. I felt nothing. Not triumph, not sadness. Just a quiet, final sense of closure. A year later, I stood in the main studio of Evergreen Design, looking out at the Denver skyline. The walls were covered with renderings, models, and photos of completed projects. The Aspen Eco Lodge had won a National Sustainability Award. I'd just signed a contract for a $4 million community center in Boulder. My team had grown to 12 architects and designers. We'd moved into a renovated warehouse in the Rhino district, a space with 20-foot ceilings and walls of glass. But the thing I was most proud of wasn't on the walls. It was in a newly established nonprofit, the Arthur Reeves Foundation for Ethical Architecture. Using the restitution money and my own contributions, I'd created a scholarship fund for young architects from families who couldn't afford their education. Each year, we funded 10 students. We gave them mentorship, internships, and a community that believed in them. Diane served on the board. So did Rebecca. And so did a special advisor, Detective Sarah Kim, who'd become a close friend. One afternoon, A young woman named Clara, one of our first scholarship recipients, came to the office. She was 19, brilliant, and designing her first community garden project. She spread her drawings across my desk, her eyes bright with excitement. "What do you think?" she asked. I looked at her designs. They were raw, imperfect, but full of potential. I smiled. "I think this is the start of something beautiful," she beamed. And in that moment, I felt my grandfather's presence, like he was standing beside me, his hand on my shoulder. I built my own legacy. Not on lies, not on theft, but on integrity. On truth. On the foundation that mattered. If you're watching this and you've ever been treated as a resource instead of a person, know this. You are not obligated to carry someone else's weight. You are not required to be the foundation for people who would tear you down to build themselves up. Your name, your work, your life, they belong to you. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away and build something new. My name is Maya Reeves. I'm 29 years old. I'm an architect, and I design my own future now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to rebuild after betrayal? You are not alone.